former South African President Jacob Zuma's corruption trial is postponed. Welcome to the program. I am Amarachi Ubani. Mozambicans have been voting in their general elections as President Felipe Nyusi looks to secure another term with his governing Frelimo party seeking to extend its decades-long rule. The main opposition, the Renamo party, is aiming to win the local elections in its traditional strongholds, even if it cannot secure power at a national level. Frelimo and Renamo were rivals in Mozambique's long civil war, which ended in 1992. Earlier this year, they signed a new peace deal after resurgence of violence. There are 4 candidates running for the presidency and 26 parties and coalitions running for legislative and provincial elections. Retired academic Kais Said is set to become Tunisia's next president after a landslide victory in Sunday's vote. The Electoral Commission announced that the former law professor, a 61-year-old, secured 73% of votes in the runoff election. He was up against media mogul Nabil Karoui, who had campaigned from prison after being arrested on charges of money laundering and tax fraud. Exit polls suggested that Mr. Said benefited from huge support among young voters. And in Guinea, opposition members and civil society groups outraged by potential revision to the country's constitution that would allow President Alpha Conde seek a 3rd term in office are calling for a second day of protest. At least 4 people were killed, one of them a gendarme, in clashes on Monday. Live ammunition and tear gas were reportedly fired in clashes between demonstrators and security forces. Hours beforehand, the capital city, Conakry, came to a standstill. News of the planned protest spread. Schools and businesses were closed and roads mostly deserted. Protests were also held in the cities of Labe, Mamu, and Kia.
Gunfire on the streets of Conakry as protesters burn tires and throw stones at police operatives. The demonstration in Guinea's capital is the first of a series of planned rallies against a potential change to the country's constitution, one of which could allow President Alpha Conde to seek a 3rd term in office. In spite of the low numbers, security forces appear to be out in force, breaking up makeshift barricades and making some arrests. When Conde first came to power in 2010, he ended 2 years of military rule and raised hope for democratic process in the country. But his opponents say he's since cracked down on dissent. Now 81 years old, the ruler has refused to rule out running again. His 2nd term expires in 2020.
South Africa's former president, that is, Jacob Zuma, today appeared at the Pietermaritzburg High Court in KwaZulu-Natal to answer to charges of corruption, money laundering, and racketeering linked to a multi-billion rand arms deal, more than a decade after the charges were first brought. Appearing for the state advocate, Billy Downer proposed that the trial starts in April next year, while Mr. Zuma's counsel informed the court that his client will be appealing against last Friday's court dismissal of his application for a permanent stay of prosecution, made along with co-accused French arms company PAL. The case has been adjourned to a holding date of February 4th, 2020, for a pre-trial session.
By agreement between the parties that this matter, while both parties are ready, at least 2 of the parties are ready at this point to proceed, there is an agreement that the matter be adjourned as a holding date to the 4th of February next year.
Let's get more on this now from our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Debia, who is in Johannesburg. Betty, thanks for joining us on the program. I want to believe that South Africans have been invested in this story. So what are their reactions to the latest on the Zuma corruption trial?
Well, there was nothing that happened today that anybody didn't expect. People expected the session to be a short one. People expected him in court. People expected some of his, probably a smaller number of his supporters outside court. And people expected him to indicate his intention, along with the co-accused, of course, to file an application for leave to appeal against that last Friday's judgment. But everything happened, so people are not really surprised. To many, no surprises there today.
And this is a trial, or even before the trial began, the news of President Jacob Zuma's corruption activities have been out there in the media for people to read up on. Should the former president be found guilty on these charges, what punishment is he likely to face, and will that run concurrently along with the other charges that he's had, also considering the many years he spent, with investigations and so on?
Well, since the trial is yet to start, trial is just about to start. Remember, the charges were dropped at the point, I think in 2009, after going back and forth. But if we go by what his co-accused at the time, or his financial advisor, Shabir Sheikh, got for the same crimes, for offering the bribes, Shabir Sheikh got 15 years, although he only served 28 months. That's 2 years and 4 months, and was granted medical parole. So should he be found guilty and convicted and nothing else, no appeal and the like, he is likely to get about 15 years if you want to go by by what Mr. Shabir Sheikh got. So that's still up in the air. Nobody knows, but it's at the discretion of the judge in the case.
Well, you would think that as a former president, he'd enjoy some immunity, but that seems to have that seems to be absent in all of this. And is there a reason the trial has dragged on for so long? And will this be? I mean, is there a reason this case has dragged on for so long? And is he likely to have a short trial?
The state is hoping to have, and I'm sure the judges as well, to have a fast or speedy enough trial. But this case has dragged on for over 10 years, and we know that there have been so many issues, some of them political considerations as well. And at the time that this case, let me take the issue of Shabir Sheikh, who was his financial advisor. Remember at the time that this crime was allegedly committed, it was not the president. He was like an MEC, like a commissioner in a province in KwaZulu-Natal. So the case, Shabir Sheikh was tried, Zuma wasn't. At the time, in his defense, he was trying to, when the case was now brought up against him, he held on to what we now know as the spy tapes, which is actually a conversation between then prosecution boss Bulelani Ngcuka and the head of what was called the Scorpions at the time, that's Leonard McCarthy, and recorded conversations between them, which allegedly wanted to time time his indictment point to coincide with an elective conference in 2007, ANC elective conference, to manipulate the outcome so he would emerge the leader of the ANC. But he eventually did. So a lot of back and forth, and we know at the time too, his attorney had promised that they'll fight every fight and probably appeal anything appealable just to buy time and to delay, and that has dragged on. So the boss of the NPA, that's the National Prosecuting Authority at the time, Bokodede Mshe, in 2009 now dropped the charges, citing the fact that probably there was political manipulation or political interference in the case, and that was dropped. Now this has come up because the opposition party, DA, that's Democratic Alliance, has been fighting to get the spy tapes, which is succeeded in 2014, and back and forth, here we are, when the Constitutional Court, the Supreme Court of Appeal, now said that the dropping of the charges was irrational, and the case is now coming up again. So hopefully it will be dragged on, and maybe he'll get to stay in court, as he said he wants.
And I expect that the courts will be thorough. I think the South African courts over there are quite thorough with each case. Mr. Zuma still enjoys a lot of support, in the country despite these charges against him, and he's been known to speak to supporters after every court meeting. Did he do that today, and what did he say to his supporters?
Yes, the usual rhetorics. He played the victim as usual, and this time he said that the dismissal of his application for permanent stay of prosecution last Friday was that it didn't make sense. The truth will prevail, and that he has indicated his intention or that he has indeed filed an application for a leave to appeal against that. That is expected to come up probably by the 22nd of November. We know we have that holding date in February where a pre-trial will happen. And what will happen there depends on the outcome of that application for leave to appeal against the dismissal of his application for a stay of a permanent stay of prosecution. So everyone is accusing him of delaying. Remember, this issue started when he was in his 60s. Now he's well into his 70s, but he's doing all that. He's still playing the victim, and he also gave them a taste of his usual song, struggle song, Shinua, which means "Give me my machine gun." But all that was expected today. But people are saying that the support, even political support, is reducing now, and many of his supporters were not present as usual, but they were there, and they supported him.
Well, if there's anything we know about the courts, there will be plenty more on the Zuma trial coming up and the issues surrounding it. Betty, thank you again for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you.
Well, staying in South Africa, the Home Affairs Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, has appealed to Nigerians that the government is making efforts to improve the visa processing time in Nigeria. He attributed the delays to the challenge of staffing and not attitude, but he promised that something is being done about it. But we began by asking him in this very short interview why Nigeria and South Africa still have visa barriers despite their shared history and collective aspirations for both countries and the continent.
What we discussed with Nigeria was a specific group of visas. We said they must give us the names of academics who want to come here to South Africa, business people who are conducting business, frequent travelers. We will give them 10-year visas. The other group are Nigerian public servants. In South Africa, all the civil servants have got an official passport if they are on official duty. But if they are not, they have to use their own private passport with visas. Now, when they are on official duties, official passport. But in Nigeria, official passports are given only to a certain level of public servants. So what we have asked is that we be given a list of junior ones when they come, because they've got no official passport. Then we'll find how a method to expedite their receiving of visas as if they've got official passports. That's what we have discussed.
So, but visa processing, for those applying for visa, it's so difficult.
Well, the difficulty is not the policy, my sister. I need to confess. It has got nothing to do with policy or our attitude. We have already discussed it, we are discussing with Treasury. It's about staffing. I am here to confess to you that we know the number of staff members to process visas in Abuja is very low. In fact, on the 10th of July, I read the budget speech in Parliament. If you go to follow that budget speech, you will read that I said for India, China, and Nigeria, we want to increase staffing 2.5 times. And that's what I'm busy doing. So it's not about policy, it's not about attitude, it's just staff. And then we're going to increase it 2.5 times.
With us on Network Africa, still ahead. A Mo Ibrahim Foundation survey suggests the quality of education provided by African countries has declined over the past 5 years.